So, if you're out there, a big DCC fan, and you're worried about spoilers, they might come up, might not, but most likely they will. This is a spoiler-heavy podcast. You got the warnings at the beginning, so if you didn't look in the description to see what things we would talk about, that's on you at this point.
It's kind of wild. I've got the book, just as an aside really quick. I have the first one. I've not cracked it yet, and I'm a little bit afraid to, just because of how many people like you, Leo, who have just been like, I couldn't put it down. What is my life now? This is all that I do.
For the record, I just finished book 7, which is the most recent book to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a little bit intimidated by it. Honestly, I can see it from here, and it's just staring me down. Just Latin music playing in the background, the second health bar hiding underneath the first.
Just a reminder, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. Different series that require a spoiler warning will be in the description.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Gaming Theater Podcast. Today's episode is going to be all about us talking about RPG Lit and RPG stories that happen in media. This isn't the same as a video game or that's been converted into like a TV show or a book or a storyline to that extent. This is stories that are inspired by video games and have that same video game-like logic that are going through with it. Now, to help me explain more of this and go through some examples that we've experienced, the guests here that are going to help me out describe these things. And over to my right is going to be...
Hi, I'm Rob. I am a student of game design.
Very valid for this one. And over to their right is going to be...
Hi, I'm WG Ashwood, your fancy-focused charity streamer. I'm a level 1 media personality, and I'm here to have a good time talking about Lit RPG.
All right. I'm a level 2 podcaster.
Dang, been grinding.
You'll be surprised how hard it is to get those levels, though.
Yeah, real life level is a lot harder than video game ones, turns out.
Mm-hmm. And over to my right is going to be...
Hi, my name is DandDaine. I'm a charity-inclined TTRPG and video game enthusiast on Twitch and the rest of the internet. And I am a level 1 sass man.
It's full of sass powers.
That's a prestige class.
Yeah. I had to take Silly Little Guy, and I had to get that really high leveled.
All right. Now, before we get started, let's take a quick trip over to the Magical Merch Booth. So here we are in the Magical Merch Booth, and on today's Magical Merch Booth, I wanted to let everybody know that we still have plans going for the future with different things of GTP and Gaming Theater Presents as a whole. If things go the way I hope they're going, we might have a weekly stream that we're trying to do later down the line, other new episodes and things for our YouTube channel, and just a couple of other things that we have on the works that we might be able to finally get back into working on those. We have a lot of ideas, but now we're starting to get to the point where we're actually being able to fulfill said ideas. And join us with this journey of ours where we try to get some of these ideas out there for you. The links to all of our GTP stuff will be in the description, along with links for these guys and stuff, and their streams and such. That being said, let's go ahead and go back to the show. So here we are on today's episode. When we're talking about RPG Lit, it's kind of a newer topic, actually, but it's been around longer than people think. I've heard it described that Game of Thrones brought grimdark to a lot more literature that's out there for it. However, Game of Thrones is not the first grimdark literature. Same with, like, high fantasy storytelling. You can go even way before Tolkien for those to get those storylines. Superhero stories have been around since almost the 1800s, and if you do the right research, even older than that. But yeah, so the reason why it's been more popular now is mostly because of the internet. Because of this, other stories and story types have been going out there, and RPG Lit, which is short for art role-playing game literature. The short end of it is books that are written with the intent of using mechanics that have been placed in different RPGs or video game genres for that one. It's just sort of a whole encompassing thing. The thing is, in our episode today, though, we're going to talk about not just books for that, but other stories and such that have happened throughout the different forms of media. I guess to start off with, the inspiration for this particular podcast episode is that I've been reading through a series called Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I've been really excited and enjoying that. For those who don't know, personally, I'm not a big reader. It takes me like I will read books, but it'll take me a while. We're talking about, if I'm lucky, I get if I'm reading a book for just entertainment or pleasure or such, it takes me 10, I maybe get like 10 pages in a night if I'm lucky for it. Like, if you've been regular on this podcast, you've heard me talk about the book Lupin, Arsène Lupin. Yeah, that's the name of the book, is Arsène Lupin. You've also heard me talk about Dracula back in season 2. It is season 4. I have still not finished those books. I'm still working on it. It's a project. Dracula, if anybody's read the original, it's a completely different way of writing for that than most books and stories go for it. So Dungeon Crawler Carl, or DCC, I think is the nickname for that one.
Yep.
Less likely to twist your tongue.
Yeah, so I don't twist my tongue all the time. But DCC is written in such a way that the pacing is very quick, surprisingly so. I've already, in about just over a week, finished the first book. I'm already partway through the second book at this point. So, if you're out there, a big DCC fan, and you're worried about spoilers, they might come up, might not, but most likely they will. This is a spoiler-heavy podcast. You got the warnings at the beginning, so, if you didn't look in the description to see what things we would talk about, that's on you at this point.
It's kind of wild. I've got the book, just as an aside really quick. I have the first one. I've not cracked it yet, and I'm a little bit afraid to, just because of how many people like you, Leo, who have just been like, I couldn't put it down. What is my life now? This is all that I do.
For the record, I just finished book 7, which is the most recent book to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a little bit intimidated by it. Honestly, I can see it from here, and it's just staring me down. Just Latin music playing in the background, the second health bar hiding underneath the first.
Mm-hmm. Oh, those are relevant to the story, too. That's a thing that happens.
I'll take your word for it.
Oh, it was funny. I was at the bookstore the other day with Zombie Head, and he goes, ooh, I want to get this book. That's a side story to the DCC stuff. Do you really want to do this? He goes, well, yeah. I mean, I don't want anything spoiled for me. Then put that book down.
Walk away.
Walk away. You want none of this. But in general, almost day one, like in the first chapter, stuff starts happening. And you can see his stats building up and such. And the nice thing about it is the stats, much like in various video games, are treated like a Chekhov's armory. Not a Chekhov's gum. That's just one thing. Chekhov's armory. They all come up. Everything that would happen is going to come up at some point in time for it.
Oh yeah, though when it comes to lit RPG, you see authors really stack the deck in their characters' favor when it comes to giving them skills, but not always paying off immediately. But sometimes you'll have a skill come up in book 1, and it's like, oh, I wonder when that'll pay off, and it'll be like book 5, and it's like, oh, that skill's been silently leveling this whole time.
Or where he's got a skill and it's not even 2 chapters down. Oh, it's come back now. We're dealing with this problem right now. It still has a lot of heart to it. One thing that comes up every so often with these types of stories is usually the person who's the main character, and you'll see this when we get to our isekai section, has played a lot of video games and they use that mechanics to their knowledge. Not so much here. He understands that this is a thing that's happening. That doesn't make him good at it. Like, he ends up being a martial artist on the basis of being mostly an accident for that. And other people who are also crawlers, once they start figuring out what's going on, tend to become even more intense. And some of them can even power level than did other things for that. And you have a talking cat. That's not related to this.
That's all you need is a talking cat.
Yeah, I wasn't with you up until you brought up the cat, and now I got to read it. So.
Oh, she's wonderful. She's sassy. She's a diva. Mm-hmm. She's everything
I'm
you
already
need a cat
sold.
to be.
You don't gotta keep selling me.
I mean, next you're gonna say there's like a dinosaur or something. I don't know.
Well, there is.
Funny story.
Dinosaurs and cats, I'm in.
What about cats riding dinosaurs?
Again, to quote the previously said, you don't have to keep selling me. I'm in.
But a lot of it is his ingenuity. A lot of it plays like a TTRPG instead of a regular video game RPG. It uses one set of the mechanics, so they know these are the rules for it. But if you've ever played a TTRPG and you've listened to any of our episodes about that, you'll hear some crazy ideas that people can do. And Carl is one of them. I take part A, I glue it to part B. Yeah, this is work with something. One of the cool things in the book is the fact that Carl has, which I wish more RPGs, especially nowadays, have this ability, the ability to scan and tell you the stats of the thing that you're dealing with. So if monster A pops up, you can scan them and see what their level is, what their abilities are, and some of a little bit of their background.
An exposition skill, if you will.
Mm-hmm. It's great for me as a reader because now I know what's going on with this guy, and also the fact that whoever does this also added flavor text to every single character on there.
Absolutely, you get a little bit of backstory in DCC with it's not just plain stats. You get where people are from, what their motivations are. The analyze skill is key to the storytelling.
I was talking to to Dibblestar, who's been on the show before, and he was like, when I explained to him how some of that RPG mechanics goes in, because he's huge at RPG, he goes, yeah, that's right. Sometimes you just use your skill a lot and then let it power up. Whoever wrote this has played it at least 1 or 2 MMOs out there. But yeah, there's a mixture of mechanics and such for it. It's hard to describe the toughest part about this is hard to describe the story without spoiling anything to the story, because that's how integrated everything is on that. But the biggest thing on that is, if he's paying attention, he can find weaknesses and strengths. And sometimes, I'm not certain if you guys have ever had a character that had to do this in either a TTRPG or a regular RPG. You're kind of stuck with the character class that you're locked into because of mistakes that you've made, and you can't start over. Keep on trucking with this.
Shout out to my barbarian in Diablo 2 that was terrible.
This isn't even a spoiler. It's on the cover. Yeah, this is the reason why Carl's running around in boxer shorts. It's not an homage to the Goblins. He's just stuck that way for a while.
I know we get this trope in anime a lot as well, where like they have a skill or an ability with a really bad downside, and at first it seems like it's this terrible, terrible thing, and it actually becomes like one of their strengths, right? You do see that quite often.
Mm-hmm. That also plays an effect. This is early on, but that happens to the cat. So, but it also makes him really, really powerful, really fast. Or Princess Donut, I should say, is amazing.
The Queen Anne chunk.
In that, they have a bit of a streamer thing going on to it, too, as part of the storyline for it. Not to mention donations and various things. This would be a good time to plug a Patreon for it, but I'm not going to do that. But that is a thing that happens in the story. But yeah, so this is where we're at right now, and the author has been writing this pretty recently. Like, I think from what I was reading from the expert, the first book didn't get published until he started working on it and was published by the end of COVID. And that's one of the big things about it is he's a very newish writer. The fact that it did so well and is blown up as it is amazing.
Oh yeah, definitely a story to admire. He's put out I believe 7 main books, with 1 book that's original, like a new original story outside of his Dungeon Crawler Carl series. But he's been very, very prolific so far. He was a guest at I believe a featured guest at Lit RPG Con, which was featured for the first time.
He would be
the
the guest of it for that year. Yeah, the first book came out 2020, just in the middle of COVID, and then Incredible. After that, the second and third and fourth book also all came out in 2021.
That's so fast.
That is very fast. I don't think outside of maybe Stephen King, who just has these on hand and he throws that out, or Brandon Sanderson, who's just, I write every single day for this, and now I have a novel that can be used as half a table, because Brandon Sanderson does not skimp out on words.
I've got to shout out my boy Drew Hayes, who is put out just a ton of books over his writing career. He judges his length of books by Bibles. Like, this is 0.7 Bibles. This is 1.3 Bibles. Just so you're aware of how much content you're getting when he puts it out.
It's so good.
That's a lot of content to rip.
They're so good, though.
So let's move on from that one for a bit. We'll come back if we need to on this. There's ways to come back to this. So this type of storyline has sort of been around for a while, though. The one big one that's out there that I can think of is in film. Scott Pilgrim versus the World is a big one. Like, it's based on the comic, on the original comic, and that comic was turned into a movie, and they both have the same relationships on that, because they both use the same mechanics. They don't change it up. Like, most of it is strictly stripped from the story. But the movie, I think, is more well known than the comics themselves for it. At least
Definitely.
I got the whole series for that in its comic form, but I watched the movie first and then backtracked to the series and then watched the movie again because I really like it. Like, different things in that gets like mechanics. You can have an extra life. If people explode in a battle, they will drop coins. And my favorite part about they will drop specifically Canadian coins.
Well, yeah, they live in Canada.
Yeah. But not only that, like, the first boss, you have to go up in bosses before you can actually get a lot of money. So the first boss is, I think, $1.35. You can't even afford to take a bus ticket. Like, Ramona has to spot him.
I mean, there's power-ups, too, right?
Oh, yeah.
The power of self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
The power of love. Not the song. The concept.
But all bosses have different weaknesses. Like, you can get your powers, you can increase in power and have these big magical abilities if you go vegan. But the second you stop being vegan for any reason, you can have those powers stripped away.
You used to be vegan. Now you will be gone.
Yeah!
Chicken parm isn't vegan?
Kind of, and like this is slightly off topic, but I always loved that because it's not that was a universal law. It's not that the act of being vegan gives you those powers. That was a law enforced by other people who had to come and take away his powers because they found out he had been not vegan enough times.
You have the de-veganizing, right?
It's a thing they have.
So like these video game tropes are enforced. They're not a natural law.
DDR is a factor in that. You can beat the people with the combos for it. Like, technically, he should be rich, but he keeps forgetting to pick up the cash that he's left behind.
I mean, who wants to grab a bunch of coins on the ground? That'll take forever.
I think it's the second boyfriend. It's the actor, the action star actor. It's who also is a skater, gets challenged to a skate park and it wrecks.
Chris Evans.
Yeah, but he wrecks like a mile away, so we're not getting the coins from that.
And the other one, Brandon Roth, he plays. You know, there's an awful lot of stars in that movie alone, now I think about it.
Yeah.
But, no, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World uses a ton of those mechanics, but everyone plays it straight. That is just a thing that everyone can do. And the comics, they actually do more so. My favorite thing is, like, it's a thing in the comic and in the movie itself. They kind of skip past, or it's the smallest fight in the movie and in the book, which is against the twins. Because at this point, you've already figured out what you're doing. The other mechanic that I think is funny is, like, when he has to use his extra life, and this is only in the movie, not in the comic. When he goes down, he has to use his extra life. He still has to go through each of those encounters again because he has to restart that level.
God, so good.
It is one of my feel-good movies. Like, I'll go back and watch it. It's on the top of that list. That one's on there, and Hot Fuzz is on there. By the way, same director for both.
Oh, Hot Fuzz is so good.
I was not aware of that.
Hot Fuzz is incredible.
It's really just the one swan.
But yeah, so that was the first movie that I could think of that come out. Well, we were talking about this before the show, but Tron kind of fits this bill. Because the games didn't come out for Tron until after the movie Tron, but the movie Tron uses the game's mechanics, like with the discs and the light cycles and such, as part of the story for Tron.
Tron is probably, I don't know if it's the earliest example of a story with video game mechanics, but it's got to be pretty close. Because it came out basically when video games came out.
So you're talking, I think Tron comes out in 82? Yeah, Tron comes out in 1982. So for those who, as a quick aside, because we talked about this during the Console War episode, so video games have been around since roughly about the early 70s, okay? But they hit it big in the arcades in the late 70s to early 80s. About 1982 is when they hit their big worldwide phenomenon, and then 83 becomes when they have the video game crash, and nobody will touch that video game with a 10-foot pole until Mario comes out later in 85. So yeah, this movie would have been perfect for the hype train that is video games when it came out.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why you don't see as many like real video game mechanics per se in Tron. Like, he's in a video game, but in a lot of ways they're not necessarily acting like the video game mechanics that you would normally see. And it's because it wasn't video games weren't super well known, weren't super popular just yet. People didn't quite know what was going on with them.
It's kind of like how in the original Mortal Kombat movie, right? Liu Kang shoots a fireball, but it's mostly just like a martial artist fantasy movie up until that point.
Yeah. Or does the bicycle kick at some point?
Yeah, like Raiden shoots lightning. I don't think he shoots lightning, and he like conjures lightning. He doesn't even launch it at somebody in the first film. But yeah. Kind of like that.
And we talked about this before. Like, there were a bunch of little cartoons that were made to show off video games. But the closest thing you get for it back in the 80s was Tron, and not relative to our storyline, but it is a thing that shows up, the Wizard.
Oh, the Wizard.
But it's definitely doesn't fit into this genre, but it is a movie based around a bunch of video games. But so, like, that's the thing with this topic. This genre isn't one that is we probably will stay around the 80s at the earliest, just because of how newish video games become at that point. And the thought of having RPGs or any kind of RPG or RPG style mostly comes from the 80s. And that has to deal with how game development is. Keep in mind, back in the 70s, game development is more as an arcade, as a novelty act for it. But in the 80s is when it actually becomes mainstream, and then you get into 84, 85 when the consoles become bigger or more well known with the Nintendo.
Well, and plus, I mean, like, until we got to 8-bit stuff, making an RPG was actually kind of hard with the technology. So you didn't see him very much, on top of the fact that they're a bit of a niche genre as far as nerds go. There's a lot of people who are nerds, but there's fewer people who are nerds that enjoy a role-playing game.
Like, playing a video game is one thing. Playing a video game that is also an RPG is a subclass to this. That's a very specific genre for those guys.
As far as movies, though, that feature video game tropes pretty heavily, I did immediately think of Ready Player One.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely a movie before it is game mechanics. But there are a few things in there that really kind of hit me. The biggest one was the Easter egg. They're hunting for an Easter egg, and by the raw definition, what they've got isn't an Easter egg. It's not a hidden thing that you unexpectedly find by exploring. They were told specifically to find this, and that makes it no longer an Easter egg.
If I told you about it, it can't be an Easter egg. That's how that works.
But like the way they go about it is kind of an Easter egg, in that you have to find these hidden areas that you wouldn't normally think to look through. Like the very first one, I believe, was there's like that Mario Kart style race, except it's more like Death World kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you find that is when the race starts, you go backwards. Because, who would do that? That's not something you would normally do in a racing game, but it would be if you're trying to find secrets hidden by developers.
You said on purpose. Yeah, that wasn't me. I have gone through Mario Kart in reverse, but that was an accident. I've also, if you've ever played Road Rash, due to certain things on it, you can't go backwards on it, but you can abandon your vehicle and just hoof it all the way over to the end. Takes forever, but my motorcycle is about to explode, and I'm like, I'm not losing this race. I'm not going to wait to spend the money to fix my bike. No, I'm just gonna run it and off the rest of this race.
It's a strategy, yes. It's not a great strategy, but
it is a thing you can do. So, on purpose, no, that was not my original thing. So this is kind of a mixed bag for it, and I'm going to mention it just because it's on my notations for it. So Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise movie where if he dies, he has to respawn and come back to from a singular point, is a very much a video game mechanic for that. Technically, it fits this category, but most of that's like a time loop. It's really how your mileage may vary on that one. But it's very, very much a game mechanic on that where you have to, where it's, and I know I've done this in various video games. You know what? It's easier for me to eat it and then restart the level than it is to just keep going with this. Oh yeah, Rob, when you were talking about Easter eggs, it reminds me of a little thing that's in there. You've played the classic original Doom, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Original Doom from the 90s, if you hit spacebar, because the controllers weren't a thing or weren't really well used for the PCs back then, you hit spacebar, it's the same button that you use to open a door. And if you find secret hidden doors, they'll open up for that. If you are later playing Duke Nukem 3D and you keep hitting the spacebar next to a bunch of doors, he will just keep asking himself, all right, where is it? Where is the thing? Where is it? Where is it? And that's a weird reference I always thought was hilarious. Live action TV shows are, I know there's more of them out there, but they are so hard to find. This is a niche genre amongst niche genres, really, is RPG literature or RPG or video game like stories like this. But there is one that I really like that I branched it on the show before. It's called Deadly Games. It was on UPN, which was already a very, very, it's one of their earlier shows. And it's a sci-fi show where the main character has a college grant to try to basically make a device that basically takes things that are in the virtual world and makes it into a real world object for that. Kind of like what we have with the 3D printer, but not as sophisticated, but with more stuff. Like he could do it organically. Because his first project was he actually made an Apple once. The machine, but he also used his college funds to make this giant VR video game because he was dealing with problems in his life, like a bad divorce that was rough, and different aspects of like being bullied, criticized, and stepped down on by different people, and he turned them all into bosses of his video games. Well, the video game gets caught into the real world, and now now all the villains are reliving their programming. The thing is, only he can beat them because he made himself the main character of the story, and that was the one file that didn't carry over, was him as the main character didn't carry over, only the villains did. And he's like, oh, nerds. And so he realizes he invented a second player, but the second player is his ex-wife that he has to go convince, hey, I need your help to stop all these extra villains or else they will destroy the planet. I know there's things. What's funny is that there is a video game mechanic in there. The mechanics are what's used to defeat any of the bosses. So the first boss is a high school bully that was this big football player that would torment him all throughout high school. Turns out his bully actually has a big fear of water and couldn't swim. And that's the one time he actually, because he trips, falls, and lands in the water, and he has to end up saving him. He still gets bullied by the same guy throughout the rest of his school year, but that was his one weakness, is that he can't swim. So the game interprets it as if he gets wet or any kind of water on him, it injures him. And now the game randomizes how much water it takes for him to actually lose. So because of that, you could either, take him out with a couple of super soakers, or you might have to actually figure out how to get gallons of water on him. Don't worry, folks. He threw him in a lake. That solved that problem right quick. The show had some interesting premises, and I wish it kept going, but like some of them also had a weirdly all-star cast on it. The final boss of the game is a guy called the Jackal, who's played by Christopher Lloyd. LeVar Burton plays his ex-boss that fired him from a video game company because he was unprofitable for it. But the reality was they just sacked him. They just put everything on him and they sacked him. And so his weakness was the color red. Anything like you throw red paint on him or anything that's red, because that was profits going down on a chart. His ex-wife's lawyer took like way more out of the lawsuits than was needed. There's one who's played by Brent Spiner, which is kind of funny. Is like he got his hands on the game but didn't like the main character, and so he put an extra boss in there. So he has to figure out how to take him out. Oh yeah, LeVar Burton's thing was kind of funny. the color red only weakened him, and he could shoot flaming pink slips at people, like a missile launcher out of his arm. But he was destroyed in the game if you can get him to be hit by a semi-truck.
My weakness as well.
Not
Don't use
truck
that
again.
against me, podcast listeners.
But that's how he deals with his trauma. But I thought the concept was really cool. It only lasted like one season, but they got to all of them, which at some point I might do a podcast episode about series like that. That and Briscoe County Jr., if you ever see it, is the only two series I can think of off the top of my head. What is it? Jackie Chan Adventures. They're like, hey, we have to get all 12 of these things. And by gum, they do it. Not even by the end of the first season. We said we would do this, and now we're getting them all. That RPG mechanic is less in line from an RPG standpoint, but is very particular for point-click adventure games where you have to beat it in a very specific way in order to get those endings, which I thought was an interesting concept for it. But yeah, that's the only live-action one I can think of.
Yeah, I don't think live action is really lends itself super well to video game style stories.
Not in a TV show. Budget alone will hurt you for that. There's a weird math for it. And this has been going on since even back in the day in the 60s with Star Trek. Star Trek was one of the most expensive TV shows to produce, but because it was a science fiction, Star Trek couldn't reuse a lot of stuff that they just had. Like, here's some TV lore for you. Back in the 50s, in the 50s or so, there was a lot of westerns TV shows that are out there. But the reason why there were a lot of Western TV shows is most of them were made in the same lot, so they reused the same sets, reused the same stuff over and over again. And that was a cost-saving measure. Twilight Zone actually did that a lot. There's a movie called Forbidden Planet, and they just took robots and things from that movie, Forbidden Planet, and used them as props for the Twilight Show to keep that budget down, which they wanted to do that because by keeping the budget down, they could use higher film quality because they could for Twilight Zone. That's a fun little fact for it. But science fiction notoriously doesn't keep. They have a great track record of keeping a large amount of fans, but a lousy track record of being easy to produce. Firefly, when that was around, costed almost $1 million per episode to make when it was first around. You know what else costed $1 million to make per episode? Friends, and that thing was bringing in way more viewers than Firefly was. It's a cost justification type thing. Same with Battlestar. Back in the 70s, Battlestar Galactica, when that was around, was super expensive to make. It's such a good show. It is just really, really pricey to make for that. On the flip side, Doctor Who was actually not that expensive to make, but they had to make a lot of it. Old school Doctor Who episodes was filmed as one big 2-hour-long movie broken into 45-minute shots for each episode. That's why each episode's part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, because they just broke it up.
Another live action that I think you could point to in terms of video game mechanics, not based on video games per se, but based around them, would be the Denji Sentai Mega Ranger, which we would know here in the States as Power Rangers in Space, which is kind of funny because in Japan, it's based off of cyberspace and digital technology, and we translated that to space because
they're like the same thing, right?
You know, it's fine. It's reasons. Basically, right? I think that they saw the like high school video game setting and were like, what do we do with that? Put it in space. Screw it. But yeah, they all have like a technological theme, which is why when they transform, their helmets have this circular cutout in it. And you can see different technologies flash across the screen when they morph, which I find very interesting. Their vehicles are the cyber sliders, the like cool hover skateboard-looking things. But it's very interesting to me that like even Japan at the time for live action was like, what are the kids into? Technology, obviously, video games. They go into a digital world. They fight digital monsters. They fight them in the real world as well. But all the monsters are one of the bad guys is literally just made of polygons, which I find very charming in this day and age, especially with the high pixel
It's a
fidelity
thing that happened.
But yeah, that was relevant at the time.
I was saying if we're counting shows that got moved over from Japan, Super Samurai Cyber Squad, I believe, was
That was the one I was trying
an
to remember.
Ultraman
Yeah.
in an Ultraman show
Yeah.
that they were like, okay, now it's about a kid who has to go into the digital grid to fight monsters that are made up by like his evil archenemy. And I fucking loved Super Samurai Cyber Squad growing up.
So good.
You got to realize that video game based live action shows, I think most of them are either already titled with something, Last of Us, Fallout, and that's about it. And that's because those already have a huge audience beforehand. That's about what we got. And most of the animation that we get for that one is also based on just like Super Mario Brothers Super Show, The Legend of Zelda, which was on every Friday. Or you had
Mega Man,
but there is
that old cartoon.
one that's kind of a little different. Captain N the Game Master is a little different for that one. Because the main character, Kevin, who's Captain N, he actually has that joypad, and it operates the same way as, or not joypad, he has the NES controller on his belt, and it operates the same way as an NES controller. If he hits up and A, he could do a super jump. If he hits left or right, but he has to double tap it, it'll actually make him dash in any direction for it. And the key is that he knows instinctively what these buttons do in other games, so he's just going to try them out. Pause actually stops all time. But yeah, so these are the video game mechanics that he has to deal with, but only he gets that, unless there's that weird episode where Mother Brain gets to make another one. Cartoons back then didn't have to deal with logic and stuff. Donkey Kong was like actually more like King Kong, and he's not that. Donkey Kong's not that big. But one I do like, a little Canadian animated series that came out, Reboot. Because each episode, almost every episode, has a video game that has to be dropped off. And so it's a big giant cube that occupies this section of their city. And everybody who's caught in there are now playing as the game's NPCs. They all hit their reboot icon, so that way they can reboot into that. But depending on the game that's in there, they all have to still stick with the abilities and gear that they have. The Dungeons and Dragons episode is hilarious with that, because Bob, our big, huge hero, comes up as who always plays a paladin. Due to due to luck of the draw, he gets to be the rogue, and he's also equipped with just a butter knife. And he's also like level 1. He's gotten every stat down he could possibly get for that one, for some reason. Although the Evil Dead Doom knockoff is my favorite one of those.
You? I don't know. I don't know that you like Evil Dead.
Oh, no, I do.
I don't think you've ever mentioned it, Leo.
But no, it was such a Doom knockoff because what was it? They were in the cabin in the woods, and they set up a trap for the hero. But the hero has decided to go exploring for Easter eggs instead, and so they've just been waiting for like 20 minutes until he finally gets there. And they do this thing, and they're like, what kind of sick guy would just go around taking out all these enemies, and instead of bothering with the main problem of the storyline? Turns to looks at the camera. Who indeed?
See, one of the things that I really kind of liked about Reboot as far as RPG mechanics go, the game mechanics were specifically in the world happening in the game. So kind of like, we got a lot of isekais these days. It was essentially a different isekai every episode for the characters in Reboot. There were a bunch of little quirks that happened in their own world because they lived inside a computer. And then they went into a game and the rules were completely different for them every single time. It was always a totally different world than what they were used to, and they had to adapt to these new rules. And I just thought that was super interesting. We don't see that a whole lot.
Yeah, that is an awesome aspect of the story. If you haven't seen it yet, the new hotness from Glitch Productions, Gameoverse, does something similar. They only have the pilot out so far, but the concept is that they go to different video game worlds and have to sort of adapt to the mechanics of that game type and try and prevent a game over. And
similar
so
to
it's
Reboot.
similar to Reboot, yeah. It's a really cool new show. I'm hoping more of it gets made.
One of the things on the Reboot that I really liked is that the mechanics themselves are affecting the player, and essentially what they need to do is make sure the player doesn't win. In a sense, the player is the player who owns the computer that everything is happening on, for the world of Reboot is the bad guy, even though he's not, whoever it is not actually a bad guy. If you go through it, you can find some of those. One of my favorite ones is that they did I think it's a racing game, like Pole Position. And the problem with that one is, like, for some reason, Enzo is the only one who has to actually drive the car, but the car keeps getting stopped because all the people of the town are trying to help out Enzo, and every time they help him out, they are just doing it, making it worse and worse, until he eventually convinces them to help out the player. And once he convinces them to help out the player, they're still helping out. So if you're the player who's just playing this video game, you were driving this car, went to the pit stop, and now your tires keep falling off. Why is the gas here? Why is he just... if I'm going to win this race, I gotta go walk to the end and hope for the best and hope they count it.
That was like a common theme, I think, in Reboot, is they often didn't try to beat the player through legitimate means. They cheated. They went out of their way to cheat so that they could beat the player. Bob specifically had a tool called Glitch for the sole purpose of cheating in video games. And, you know, if you've ever played a video game and you felt like the computer was cheating you, you know what? Reboot says it was.
The AI is cheating, for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely cheating for you on this one. Now, the next one I want to bring up is Code Lyoko. Unfortunately, I did not watch much of Code Lyoko, but it was very much kind of an isekai for itself, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't seen Code Lyoko, essentially, there's a girl trapped in her virtual world. She becomes friends with, I forget the guy's name. And he recruits some of his friends to go into the virtual world to do a bunch of stuff to try and get her out. And if they fail, evil computer will take over the world because reasons. But essentially every episode was an escort quest where they had to get the girl to a tower so she could do some sort of computer thing and stop the evil computer AI. When they went into the virtual world, they had these, like, all these video game powers that they got. But something I kind of really liked about this, they made heavy use of the extra lives system. Almost every episode ended with all three of the players dying so that the girl could get to the tower. And they were okay with that because they could just log back in the next day. They didn't really die. Their avatars died and they were locked out for a little bit.
Yeah, if I remember right, they would actually rewrite time. So, like, the big bad computer would cause things to go awry in the real world. And so by rewriting the towers, they were able to somehow rewrite time to back before the incident and carry on like normal, having usually learned some sort of lesson about friendship and doing your homework.
I mean, it was still a kid's show.
That was so extreme, though. All right, we prevented this large disaster of these buildings that are going to that'll catch on fire because of poor planning. Also, a little thing about, keeping up with your homework. I probably should keep that going for that.
Yeah, the computer has access to an atomic bomb, but let's take a moment to rap about drugs. It was the early 2000s.
Look, how else will the kids know if we don't drip feed it to them?
If you don't, take care of your environment, there's not going to be much of an environment left to have, and that's why we need whales in space to be sent to the future.
Are we talking about Star Trek 4? I love Star Trek 4.
We're talking about Star Trek 4. Side note, that is my second favorite of all the Star Trek movies. Don't know why. It hits me in a joyful place for some reason.
I'm absolutely up there with you, Leo. It is the quintessential Star Trek movie after Wrath of Khan.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even bother with Voyage Home. Just Wrath of Khan and then Star Trek 4.
Yep. After that, you're good. It's like the same thing, right? Those are the two. I know there's more animated ones that are out there, but it's kind of hard pressed to find them. Typically, when you find any of the animation ones that are out there, they are usually tied in with a video game that they're going to make anyway for it. And so this is where this genre gets, like, Code Lyoko will have a video game for itself much later down the line when it becomes more popular.
Well, it's like you said earlier on. There's a difference between a movie that uses video game mechanics and a movie that's about a video game. Because there's a lot of, like, there are cartoons out there that are just like, here's the cartoon of the video game or something like that, but they're not featuring the mechanics. They're just focusing on, like, the story and the characters and stuff like that. And they're leaving the mechanics alone because for most people, for most of these stories, the game mechanics don't actually serve a purpose. The mechanics in a video game serve a very important purpose, but in a written story, they often don't. And a lot of times they'll get in the way, which is probably why we don't see this as often.
Yeah, at least at that point, yeah, you don't see this often. But do you know where we do see it a ton of? Isekai. Isekais, we see that all over the place. Not only do they have a lot of isekais will have really long titles, but they also have video game. Most of them have video game mechanics for that are integral to the story. Konosuba has that because that's why the main character doesn't take a level into any specialty, so that way he can be generalized.
Actually, he doesn't take a level in a specialty because he can't at first.
Oh yeah, there's one that I have in our notes that I really liked. Dot Hack Sign. Dot Hack Sign, if you weren't around for that, was a project. There was a manga for Dot Hack Sign, an anime for Dot Hack. So I'm not going to call it Dot Hack Sign because that's actually a different thing. But there was an anime for Dot Hack, a video game for Dot Hack, and a manga for Dot Hack. The thing is, whatever happens in those storylines would eventually affect the other storylines as well. And it was designed as a project to go simultaneously. I don't think it worked out very well because I don't think they plotted how fast or how long it would take to make any of these things work the way that they wanted it to.
Yeah, all three of those things have very different timelines for production.
Now, there is another game that's like that we'll bump into later, which obviously has some kind of similar thing. There was a TV show for it, and whatever things that happened in the TV show was also happening in the video game at the same time. And so but I can't remember its name. Not. Give me a second. I'll try to track it down. But it's not. It doesn't use video game mechanics in their show, so it's not part of this podcast. But Doc Hack does, because one of the mechanics in Doc Hack, especially, is that the worlds are randomly generated to where everybody goes in on their adventures. So let me backtrack real quick. For those who don't know what a seed is, when we talk about video games, it's essentially a coding for how you get to a level. If a seed is like 7 characters long, right? Each one of those characters will determine how you would, what things would pop up. This was really fun back in the NES days because if you knew they were using a password system, and if you knew the right random combinations of it, you could get some weird results for it. My favorite thing is if you just it's a huge password for it, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but if you just typed L over and over and over and over again and hit select, you would have all the parts you need to get to the end, directly to the end of the game. You won't have any of the gear for it, but you have, which if anybody knows, you don't need it, but you will have the will and the key to get to the Acme factory and just go straight to the end of the game. That was an important plot point for Dot Hack. Is that I think one of the plot points is that they're trying to find the secret level of some sort. But one of the things they needed to do is figure out which seed actually got you to where. But no, if you were a healer, you would heal in real life. You would do. There was healers. There was berserkers. There were people who started up guilds to police other guilds.
If you died in the game, you died for real.
Yeah.
Well, sort of.
Sort of for Dot. No, that was the problem in Dot Hack, right? Because if you died in the game, you died for real. But it was kind of randomized, so the game never turned. So nobody knew that was a thing that was happening in the game.
Yeah.
Unlike Sword Art Online, which is that's a problem, and now we can't turn this off.
I mean, to be fair, when the creator of the game basically spills the beans and tells you that you can't leave, it's a little bit more apparent.
All right, I'm going to log off. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
In fact, you can't. Haha.
The like Sword Art Online, I feel like dropped the ball a little bit on getting its RPG mechanics into the story. They didn't focus on those quite as much as I felt would have been appropriate. Sword Art Online Abridged did though, and that is absolutely what makes it fantastic. There's my favorite part in the whole Abridged series is Kirito's like facing off against 7 player killers, and they're all attacking him just like full fledged. He's not even doing anything. He's just standing there as they attack him because his healing, his passive healing, is greater than the amount of damage that they can do. And that happens in the original too, but in Abridged they make it nice and plain and clear. I'm winning because my numbers are bigger than yours. It doesn't matter that you outnumber me. My level is higher, so you can't beat me. That's video game rules.
Defiance. That was the name of the show I was trying to remember. Oh, but yeah, that was video game rules. I'm a higher level. Why should I even bother with this? Oh man. But yeah, before I forget, like Defiance was a TV series that had stuff happen in the video game because the video game was very much a massive multiplayer game, and whenever big events, now they did it in an interesting way. Mass events would happen in the video game first, and then that would translate into the TV show's production, where they have to add it in. So, unlike Hackers, they tried it all at the same time. This one did it linearly. But it was just they couldn't keep up the cost for everything for it, and eventually, I think the game died out, and then the show also died out for that. But yeah, back to isekais and such for that one. Basically, any isekai or any anime that starts with reincarnated as an will have those mechanics. What was it? There's one that you're reincarnated as a vending machine, and the sales from the vending machine is part of its mechanics.
Oh, fantastic! Yes, reincarnated vending machine. He gets points based on how much money he gets, and he can use those points to upgrade himself, to give himself more vending machine powers. By which I mean he can turn into different vending machines that can sell different stuff.
There's also, I was reincarnated as a slime. Could not get into it, but that's mostly because the first episode was very much him trying to move, the character trying to move around as a slime. They don't move very far.
I actually really loved that anime. Really stellar story. A great integration of video game mechanics as he levels up and absorbs more monsters, and so he like starts changing his abilities. It's really great.
Like I said, I couldn't get into it, but that doesn't mean I didn't try. I gave it a good try on that one. Oh,
one that I absolutely love is Reincarnated as a Sword. You mentioned earlier, Leo, about like there being an analyze skill that pops up with information.
Yeah.
In isekais, that happens all the time. That's like, you'd be hard pressed to find an isekai that doesn't do this. But I feel like Reincarnated as a Sword does it more than any other isekai that I've ever seen. It's constantly popping up with full status windows, full stats for everything that the guy is looking at. And it's fantastic. And so it's rare that the stats really have anything to do with anything. Usually there's like, oh, here's this creature. Here's a giant list of skills that this creature has, and he has to look through until he finds the relevant one. And that's like part of the plot, is just like, oh, he has this skill. That's why he's giving me such a hard time in this battle. In a lot of these, the stats don't matter. You know, most isekais, they'll pull up a skill thing, but it will have no bearing on the plot. But in this one, it does. The actual skills get used. The actual skills that they see on the enemy are taken into account for their battle plans. And they even discuss things like his stats as a sword, his attack stat is actually lower than a lot of other swords. And it's depressing to him because he wants to be the best sword he can be. Why isn't my attack power going up? Because he has a skill and he doesn't understand how to use it. But basically, if you put more mana into him, the attack tower increases. And that makes him stronger than any other sword around. But he doesn't find out about that until like episode 4.
Oh man, yeah. There's a card game series that I've been meaning to take a look at. Not Yu-Gi-Oh! We've all heard of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's a thing.
What's Yu-Gi-Oh?
Wait, what is this Yu-Gi-Oh! You speak of? No, there's one that was tied in with Marvel, of all things. And it's the Marvel characters are all stuck as superheroes, all stuck in a digital card world, and they have to use the digital cards to help solve this problem. Except for I think Deadpool didn't get put into a card, and so he just gets to explain things for everybody. And since Deadpool can break meta, that's a thing. But yeah, so like, oh, what is it? There's so many animes for isekais. So, and we talked about this before. Isekais were, a lot of this was done as light novels, and then what ended up having a lot of light novels happens to have these RPG lit stories. A lot of them are light novels. Now, back years ago, when isekai started to become a new thing around the time of Sword Art Online, hey, we need other animes for it. All right, and this light novel was pretty popular. Let's get other light novels. And by sheer coincidence, most of those happen to be RPG-based storylines, and so that's why we had so many of them that popped up. This is a matter of sometimes it's a trend. This is a matter of coincidence.
It does turn out that when you have a bunch of novels written about fantasy stories, they translate fairly well to anime, right? I am an isekai enjoyer. I think they're great. I like the silly long titles, but at the same time, I absolutely understand that there's quite a few of them these days, right? At the time that Dot Hack is coming out, or even when Sword Art bloomed into popularity, we didn't have as many fantasy stories in terms of like video game based fantasy stories at the time, right? You had a lot of a lot of different fantasy stories, but not so many that were related to video games. So it was novel at the time, which I think is part of the reason why they became so popular, is that they were something that was relatable to the audience watching them, but that had not really been covered very much beforehand.
Yeah, and it makes sense time-wise, because there is a correlation to the popularity of role-playing, of RPGs and role-playing games with the popularity of this genre, this as a whole genre for it. A lot of isekais and such were written, and the light novels and such were written in the 80s. But in the 80s, RPGs in Japan were happening more often. We're talking about Final Fantasy, Dragon's Quest, and there's so many smaller ones, especially in Japan. To the man who helped bring Tetris to Game Boy, before that, made an RPG. And we talked about that earlier in our podcast episode about the console wars for it. No, the handheld console wars for that one. There's a difference, Dane.
Yeah, you hate one of those.
Yeah, Leo hates one of those console wars and doesn't the other. Ashwood's right.
They are all my children.
Except for the ones you don't recognize. Your illegitimate offspring.
Oh. But yeah, so like, and those are some of the ones that we've experienced and such for it. If we went through listing out all the isekais that are on there, we would be there all day. But my point to this one is, in the 90s, RPGs became huge, more around in the United States and in Europe for it. And so, with that, now that we get into the early 2000s, now that anime is easier to get your hands on, trust me, people who will tell you stories about trying to get their hands on anime in the 90s. That joke was not a joke. It was easier to get drugs than it was to get anime.
Would you say we were running through the 90s?
Oh, yeah, I'd run through
Running in the 90s.
Running in the 90s, yeah. There is an interesting correlation. The more popular RPGs came around, especially in the early 2000s, and anime being easier to both get your hands on for it, you bump into this situation where anime companies wanted to make more anime. Who knew? There's a market for this. Let's get more of it. Oh no, we don't have a whole lot of stories. Let's go with some of these light novels. that were mostly made in the 80s that were mostly about RPGs. And then it just coincidentally became a thing for that one.
Well, I think there is kind of another aspect to it as well. You mentioned that part of what you like about the Analyze is it's the exposition box, right?
Yeah.
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 TV writers are always trying to find ways to give you exposition without spending a lot of time on it. Because nobody actually likes to sit through exposition, but it's super helpful to get your readers or your watchers caught up and understand what's going on.
Mm.
And what's better, what's faster, and what's more in character than a box of text, a window, there to help you and show you the stats? Now this monster shows up and I can pop up text on there to tell you everything you need to know about this monster. And it only has to take up 3 seconds of airtime. Because if the viewer cares that much, they'll pause and they'll read it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't care, we'll immediately move on. But I don't have to have a person say these things out loud and spend 3 minutes telling me about the goblin skills and history and abilities. I could just, get that over with immediately. So for anime, that's fantastic.
Looking at you calling game rules.
So yeah, I mean, honestly, just as far as like storytelling devices, is getting your storyteller out there, RPG mechanics are a huge help.
Yeah.
And in kind of the same way, right? Log Horizon is an isekai. It is based on a video game type storyline. And the main character, basically, he doesn't have like an analyze skill per se, but he's like an intelligent enough human being in the real world that like he recognizes patterns. He recognizes these things. So like, as you mentioned, a lot of the exposition does come from him kind of explaining to his followers or his like fellow party members, as well as the audience at the same time, being like, oh, if we, fight the goblins on 2 fronts, we'll be able to limit their forces and kind of bottleneck them in or what have you. So I do find that also kind of very interesting. As you mentioned, right? Like the exposition is hard for someone to give a lengthy discussion. But if the main character is explaining to a party member who doesn't know better, your brain, or at least mine, was like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, like you're explaining to this dumbass, not me. Yeah, that makes sense.
There's 2 video game based examples that I really loved. If you ever played the original Legacy of Kain, all of it, all of the weapons and gear that you have, they don't explain stats, but they do explain the narration for the background for everything for it. And sometimes you just want to hear the it was very much flavor text as flavor for it. So if I wanted to know more about it, and I just wanted to hear more of this sexy vampire voice, I can hit a button and do that. The other one is the original Resident Evil. Most of the background story in Resident Evil are hidden in notes and notations everywhere. You could skip all of it. And there's only, I think, 4 notes in the entire game that you're mandatory have to actually read. Everything else in the game, you could skip it and just power through it.
Now, who would do that?
Not this guy. That's why I don't have a speedrun record.
Ashwood audio.
But no, if you have a large world like that and you want to do the exposition for it, finding ways to get exposition out for RPG literature, there's ways to do it really easy and really quick too, or at least enough to get you going for it. The one that has RPG mechanics but doesn't an anime that doesn't come off with that readily was Goblin Slayer. Goblin Slayer uses those mechanics, and what's funny is that the main character, Goblin Slayer, that's not just a profession, that's also his name.
They don't have names in Goblin Slayer, they only have titles.
For those who want to get into Goblin Slayer, keep in mind it's a very explicit, is I think the safe word to say that?
It's a good word for it, yeah.
Yeah, it is explicit. There is a lot of themes and things that are not for children on that.
Themes, yes. Do not watch this with your family.
Yeah, this is not a fun family romp to deal with this. But for our purpose, it is important to recognize that the mechanics are part of the storyline for it. Goblin Slayer is literally the best at slaying goblins. And the thing is that because of that, Goblin Slayer understands that a lot of new heroes don't know how bad goblins can actually get, because goblins in general are treated as an easy adventure for a lot of up-and-coming adventurers. But it can go south real fast on that. And that's what the first episode is, which is why I want to stress it out here. That is very explicit content.
Watch at your own risk.
We don't shy away from that. But I will warn you on that one. But yeah, so mechanics, right?
I'm told the mechanics for Goblin Slayer are more like upfront in the manga, but I haven't actually read it, so I don't know for certain. They're kind of light on mechanics in the anime itself.
They are there. There is a storyline part of it that you were explaining to me once, Rob, about how Goblin Slayer was teaching somebody how to use a slingshot. And most people don't bother with the slingshot because they don't do a lot of damage. But the way Goblin Slayer treats it is, yeah, they don't do a lot of damage, but you also pick up a rock, put it in the slingshot. You have almost infinite ammo. And so he's using tactics that he's come up with to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, that was one thing I did like about Goblin Slayer was they kind of had this arc about training the newbies. Because until they started doing that, there basically was no training for adventurers. You sign up at the Adventurers Guild, you go take a quest, and then you probably die because you don't know what you're doing. And so they eventually decided, hey, maybe that's not the best way to go about it. So they start like doing organized training for people who are coming in, having the vets teach them what the heck to do. And since Goblin Slayer is the expert on slaying goblins, and goblin slaying is probably going to be one of your first quests that you take when you become an adventurer, he's kind of the ideal teacher.
But yeah, so those are the ones that I could think of off that we've got a list for it. But yeah, the big thing about this episode is that understand that having these video game-based mechanics in your story can be really fun, especially if you can integrate it really well in your story. And some of the ones that we talked about here are all examples of good ways that they integrate it into their story for it. So before I end this episode, is there any other ones that you'd want to talk about how they work from any genre for it? So like one example for me that I actually really enjoyed for a while there, it's a webcomic called Goblins. And it was a fun webcomic. I think it's done now.
No, it's still going.
It's still going. It's just updated very rarely.
Yeah, well, that's fair. So with it, in it, it's about a series of goblins that decide, what if we were players and we decided to become player classes, and they all take classes in RPG classes. Some of them because of different backstories. Like one guy takes monk because he knows that monks have a high rate of being able to break out of that capture. Or Fumbles, who just decides, I need all the classes, and now it takes forever to level up because anytime everybody else is hit level 1, he's got to divide it 12 times.
He's 1/8 of every class, and he eventually levels up to become 2/8 of every class. I in that comic I really liked Complains, who is arguably the main character. He picks the barbarian class because he has a temper. It's not that he is a barbarian and then gains a temper. He already has a temper, and that's the reason he picked the barbarian class, so he could use that to his advantage.
Yeah, Goblins is one that I really liked, though. I thought that was a fun one.
Kind of on that same note is another webcomic that is still going, a very long runner, Order of the Stick. It is a stick figure comic about an RPG world, and like the mechanics, everybody has them, everybody is aware of them, and the whole world revolves around them. So like there's one comic that I really loved, and it's after the main character, spoiler alert, the main character has died and has come back. He's been resurrected, and so he's spending a night with his girlfriend. They're having a chat about like existential stuff. And he mentions that he thinks that humans are so willing to risk their lives as adventurers because they know it's possible that they can come back. Because the resurrection spell exists. So death isn't so scary. And they know that there's an afterlife. So dying is not so scary because we also know what comes afterward, and we know that we deserve whatever we get. There's this whole system of rules. And he talks about, like, just imagine if we lived in a world where that wasn't the case, where we didn't know about the afterlife. It'd be like living in a world without spell slots. And like it's just funny because like the examples as he gives is obviously something that we don't have in the real world, but for them it's such a normal fact of life they can't even imagine life without it.
It does kind of remind me to a novel that Ashwood turned me on to, a novel series by Drew Hayes, who we've mentioned previously. But you mentioned, already had a rage problem, so became a barbarian because of that. Not didn't make the choice, but made the choice because of other factors. And I know this is a spoiler-heavy podcast, but without spoiling anything, because I think everyone should read it on their own, there is sort of that trope present as well, where like certain characters already have these inclinations, and you're like, oh, this person's the monk or whatever, because they're gonna fist fight, and they kind of flip it on its head and go a different direction with it. And I think that's a really fun like trope to play with in that space, is sort of subverting your expectations while still utilizing different RPG or TTRPG nomenclature. I think it's really fun.
Get through Dungeon Crawler Carl and manage to get through the whole thing. I'm going to go back and check out that book then.
It's real good.
Yeah.
NPCs is awesome.
Oh, NPCs. Yeah, that was another one.
Ashwood, tell me about it. Tell the folks at home.
So it begins as the story of a couple of non-player characters who are thrust into an adventure when the player characters mysteriously die at their inn. And due to circumstances outside of their control, they must take on the quest that the player characters were originally charged with in order to save their village. And that's how it begins. And it's on books 5 now, and it's grown just crazily beyond that premise. I highly recommend NPCs by Drew Hayes for any TTRPG or lit RPG enjoyer.
Another one that I really like, also another webcomic I used to frequent, RPG World was a fun one.
Oh, yeah.
Took the long hiatus. I don't even think it's still going anymore.
No, it stopped like in the final battle and then never picked up again.
If you're got a cliffhanger, thanks, I guess. But one of the things on there that I thought was funny is something that rarely happens, but I thought, and I read the notes because their author leaves notes for a lot of the comics. There was a point where our main character, Hero, who's named Hero, is talking to this character named Cherry, who was not originally named Cherry, but has to remind every time I forgot what Cherry's original name was, but that's because Hero didn't like the original name and just changed it on the fly, which you could do with old RPGs all the time. And like, hey, but you're they made her parents, but you're my daughter. I think Sapphire. I changed the name to Cherry. Cherry, gotcha. But later, like they have a heart-to-heart, talks through this art, and like a typical person who, and it gets to the end of this message. It goes, "Oh, so what do you think about that? Yes, no," and he hits no, and Hero hits no. Oh my god, is that really what you think? Oh no, I wasn't paying attention. I was hoping you would just tell me it again. And in that same page, he goes through that conversation again and gets attacked by the bear and has to reload their game, and that conversation does not pop up the second time around. So they just move on. And apparently the notes of that it was something to the extent of, I don't remember which RPG I was playing at the time, but this did happen to me. Somehow I could not get this to happen twice. It also happened to me in a game of Fallout where this special secret item I managed to get once. I'm like, cool. Died, reloaded, came through the whole thing, did the exact same stuff. Didn't show up. Don't know what I didn't do. But no, it was a fun one though, RPG World. It's kind of sad to know that I didn't finish it.
Yeah, they kind of sort of finished it. The artist went on to become an actual like animator, and he's like an animation director at some studio or something now. But I think it's called OK Go Let's Be Heroes, something like that.
OK KO.
OK KO, that's it. Yeah, it's like the animation director on that. And there was an episode dedicated to his webcomic that he never finished, where they gave us sort of an ending that you can watch.
those are the ones I know of, and I think we've talked about a couple other ones. Any other ones before we close this episode out?
Kind of one that I wanted to talk to, but didn't quite get the chance, was solo leveling. If you don't know the story, it's essentially RPG mechanics are real, but only for certain people. And this guy winds up getting like super special ones that make him ultra powerful. But the thing is, you find out later, spoiler alert again, the RPG mechanics are actually designed from the person that gave him the power to train him. He's becoming this like demon lord kind of guy. I think it's the Shadow King is what his official title is. The original Shadow King gave him these powers, and he's using this RPG interface to teach him how to use these powers. And eventually, towards the end of the series, that stops. The RPG interface, it's no longer there because he's learned how to use the powers, and now he can just like use them. And I always thought that was kind of interesting that we would use RPG mechanics as training wheels.
Well, I find it funny, like, in that show specifically, too, right? Where, like, he has to do real-world applications of leveling in order to sort of overcome the challenges that he's facing, right? Where there's a scene very early on where he has to run, I don't know, some amount of kilometers. I speak freedom units, I'm so sorry. But some amount of kilometers that is apparently pretty grueling. And you see him sort of start to do that, and he accomplishes it the first day and then has to do it again the next day and again. And you watch him sort of grow and become stronger over time, which I think is kind of a fun way of like introducing the analog of leveling up. Even more so than just like a stat screen where you see your stats go up, which they do that too. But you actually like see him putting in sort of the work, you know?
I think those are all the ones I can think of that I want to all the ones I wanted to mention.
I could talk at length. I'm a big enjoyer of novels. I'm a big reader, so I have a long list of audiobooks. And Lit RPG has a significant chunk of that. I won't call out any other ones specifically, even though I wrote out a big list. I'm not just gonna list it all out for everybody, but it is progression fantasy in and of itself, I think, is very rewarding, especially at times when you may otherwise not find yourself in control, which I think a lot of people can relate to at the moment. Progression fantasy like Dungeon Crawler Carl and solo leveling and other fantasy aspects that utilize RPG mechanics to tell their story can be very rewarding right now.
Oh, yeah. And it's a fun time for all. Unless you hate those stories, then it's not fun for you.
It'd be pretty miserable, probably.
But yeah, that's about it. Our next episode will be coming up on... if everything goes right, will be released on July 3rd. That being said, this is Gaming Theater Podcast logging out. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Gaming Theater Podcast is hosted, created, produced, and edited by Leo Garcia, the Geek Scorpio. Our music is A Drinking Game. Stock media provided by Stormwave Audio /Pond5. Our cover art is by Adam Parker. You can find him at ParkerGFX on Twitter. If you want to send us some money to help with these episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingtheaterpresents. Want to send support that doesn't hit your wallet? Please leave a review with wherever you hear your podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. It really helps out. Thank you for listening.